Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and this time we've got the pleasure of watching Enmai playing in the Tier 10 American medium tank, the M-40a1 Patton. Now you might be surprised to hear that this vehicle is my most ever played tank in the game. And the reason why I say that must be a surprise to many of you who perhaps don't watch my live stream is that there's hardly any gameplay of this tank on this channel. Now, why is that? Well, we're going to have to go back nearly 4 years now. Well, not quite 4, 3.5 nearly. Back to patch 7.5, when this tank was first introduced in the game. This is August 2012. This vehicle came in, and it was the most fun vehicle I've probably ever played in World of Tanks, even since then. I played hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of games in this vehicle. It was absolutely killer. I used it in the tank companies, I used it on the Clan Wars map. Back then there wasn't tank locking like there is now, and so you could play this round after round after round after round in Tier 10 competitive matches to win glory on the campaign map. It was a hell of a lot of fun. Probably one of my favorite periods in World of Tanks. So that period lasted for 2 months. It lasted for August. Yeah, August and September in 2012. And then what happened? Well, 8.0 came, and they nerfed the hell out of this tank. Let me just tell you what the rate of fire was on the Patton for those 2 months. It was 7.5. It was the same as the current SDB1. However, this vehicle didn't only just have great rate of fire. Its dispersion and its accuracy, sorry, not accuracy, its dispersion and its aim time was incredible. It had 1.7 seconds aim time, and its dispersion bloom when turning the turret was 40% better than we saw previously before this tank was buffed. But I'm getting ahead of myself there. Ignore about what's happened to this tank in patch 9.13 now. I'm talking about what we thought the M48A1 was in patch 8.0 right up until patch 9.12 until recently. And the tank also had 15% worse bloom whenever it fired. And so, sorry, 15% better bloom whenever it fired in patch 7.5 rather than later on in patch 8.0. So what that meant is that you could just fully turn the turret and almost, bam, instantly fire off a shot. You could snapshot like a total boss in this tank. You could bomb it along on the move and hit every single shot that you fired. It was just simply glorious. It was so good back then that you didn't even really need to use vertical stabilizers on this tank. I used a rammer, vents, and I used coated optics, for goodness sake. How ridiculous is that, to think that you could even not use vertical stabilizers on a tank? It was just that powerful. Then 8.0 came. They destroyed the DPM of this tank. The rate of fire went from 7.5 seconds, and it was nerfed by like 10% down to, I think, about 6.8 rounds a minute. Absolutely killed this tank. Also, they destroyed the dispersion by 40% when turning the turret, which meant that you had to aim for quite a while once you turned the turret to be able to hit your targets. And so you couldn't be ripping apart tanks as quickly as this. The DPM was nerfed. You couldn't be snapshotting into turrets. You couldn't be trying to hit weak points. You couldn't be just as active as you could in the game. And so that kind of killed the M48A1 for me. I had my most skilled crew in this tank for so long, until recently when I've overtaken it with my French medium tanks. So since then I've played the M48A1 sporadically, you know, just probably hoping that I might get a same feeling from World of Tanks as I did for that couple of months where this tank was horrendously overpowered, if I admit it. But back then I'd played less than 10,000 games, and I didn't really have the same morality in a way. Oh, this tank is overpowered, I shouldn't play it. Not really the competition. I was still learning the game, and I was, I guess, a lot more unsure of myself back then than I would be now, thinking that I quite liked having that advantage over my opponents to be able to dish out the punishment rather than seeing it as a competitive challenge. So, we've talked about the Patton in 7.5 to 8.0, those short 2 months being completely overpowered. And then the tank spent the next over 3 years in my opinion, a very uncompetitive state, where tanks came out such as the SDB1, where tanks recently came out such as the TVP, although the tank never really was competing directly with the TVP. But you get my idea that Wargaming were releasing more and more powerful tanks consistently in the game. We saw more Soviet medium tanks come out, such as the Object 140, which absolutely obliterated this tank. Vehicles that kind of just kept pushing it down and down and down. We saw buffs like the FV4202 coming out, which is kind of a lot like this, just with a better performing gun like this tank used to have. Until recently, patch 9.13 absolutely buffed the socks off this tank. Fair enough, not back to that patch 7.5 standard, but halfway in between. The rate of fire went back to 5% better than it was previously in patch 9.12. So it's right in the middle of what it used to be. The dispersion was buffed by 33%, meaning that it's not quite as good as it used to be, but still very competitive, which allows you to make snapshots like this. The aim time on this tank is just beautiful. That was buffed as well, from 2 seconds to 1.9 seconds. What a hit there into the cheeks of that T10E4. A very skilled player, great shot Enmai, absolutely dominating this endgame situation, even though his team is now 3 versus 5. So while the tank is not quite as good as it once was, it's good enough. It's good enough without it being the new greatest medium tank. And so that is why I am super excited to be playing this tank again in patch 9.13. Now that Christmas is over and I can sit down and have a few games of World of Tanks, I'm looking forward to putting this tank through its tests. Fair enough, it's not going to be as good as it was, but it's got pretty darn close, and I think this tank could be in a bit of a sweet spot now. Fair enough, this tank won't have the raw power of the SDB1. It won't have that 7.5 rounds a minute rate of fire. But it now has much better dispersion than the SDB1. It doesn't have to aim for probably 2 seconds before it fires a shot. Its aim time is just so much better, its dispersion is so much better than that tank, that I really wonder if it's worth having that SDB1 rate of fire in any situation apart from up close and personal. It's kind of the same as the difference between an Object 140 and an Object 430. The Object 430, with its 2.3 seconds aim time and terrible dispersion values, can never really use the DPM, the slight DPM advantage that it has over the other Soviet medium tanks. And so for me, I feel like I actually will do more damage, apart from in close quarters situations where you don't have to aim, with a tank like the Object 140. And I think that could be a situation again for the M48A1, that in at least mid to long ranges, and even in mid to short ranges, apart from just close-up fights, I just think this tank is going to be so much more efficient than the SDB1. Unless, of course, you're firing at a gigantic target, such as the FV4005, where you don't even really need to aim because its head is just so darn fat. What an ambush here, that Tier 10 British tank destroyer. Totally messed up the end of this game. He should have played this a lot safer and tried to use the support of his artillery. He got completely ambushed there. Terrible play by him. Surprising, because he's a statistically very strong player and he's on 4 kills. Maybe he just got overconfident then. So what I'm trying to say, and I know I haven't commentated really very much on the fantastic round that Enmai has got here, is that the M48A1 is back, baby, and I cannot wait to be playing this tank, both tonight on the live stream and also in the upcoming weeks and months. And I think if you haven't paid this tank respect since patch 8.0, then there's probably never been a better time to either dust it off in your garage, or maybe even rebuy it this month while it is on 15% off, I think, with all of the sales that are on the servers. And so unfortunately for Enmai at the end of this game, the T44 is AFK. And some of you might be saying, well, why is that unfortunate? It's really lucky to have an AFK on the enemy team because he's not going to fight back and you're going to kill him. But I think, personally, for me, for a player of Enmai's quality, he's a fantastic player. I think he would have relished the opportunity to be able to cut down this T44, who I don't know, he probably wouldn't have been able to handle the raw power of the M48A1 Patton. Considering that Enmai has played a near flawless game here, absolutely incredible result. He's still got 3/4 of his hit points left, even though at that point he had picked up 8 kills and done 7,000 damage. Some of you in the last video, when I was doing that IS-3A, and I mentioned that the SP-1C at the end of the game was AFK, so, oh, this makes this Kolobanov's model dubious. And a lot of, well, at least a couple of you wrote in the comments that you thought, oh, you're just being mean to him because you're and you're like jelly of the fact that he got this and you're Kolobanov's medal. That's not entirely what I was trying to, that's not at all what I was trying to suggest, and it's not what I'm trying to suggest here. All I'm saying is that a lot of people, like Enmai, I bet, play this game as a bit of a competition to blow off some steam and have some fun. And when you're chasing a pools medal and you're getting one of the biggest games you could probably ever hope for in the M48A1 Patton, at least for me, one of the last things that you want is to have that kind of achievement just a little bit tarnished by the AFK at the end of the game. But I digress. I probably shouldn't have said anything at all because a lot of people will get the wrong end of the stick. And the real thing that we should focus on here is that Enmai had an absolute monstrous game in his M48A1 Patton. Some of the snapshots that he was able to pull off against the SDB1, the T10 that M48A1, were purely because of the dispersion buff that this tank has received to the turret at 33%, which means that if you've got good reactions using the newly buffed M48A1 Patton, you're very capable of either damaging or destroying your opponents and pulling back around the corner if necessary before they've even managed to get a shot off near you because they're still aiming. Enmai put himself in the right situations in this game, read the map very well indeed, and considering it was just him and this T10E5 at the end of the game versus 5 opponents, a lot of those very skilled players, this was a fantastic result and he certainly fed his team to victory. Let's just take a very quick look at the post-game stats. This was Enmai's 3rd mark of excellence in the M48A1 Patton. Congratulations to you, what a result. Pools medal for that 10th kill, unsurprisingly a high caliber medal for 9,181 damage. 1,564 base experience points, hitting 31 out of the 33 shots that you fired, of which not all of them were even fully aimed, and of those 28 penetrating the target. This was just an awesome round for this tank, and the fact that he didn't even really get hit that much, only hit twice all game, and one of those bouncing off, really showcases that with some tight control of your tank and careful aiming, you can just pick apart your opponents in this tank, but still have the armor to be able to take a hit, unlike a vehicle such as the Leopard 1. And Enmai was able to get 63,000 credits profit in this game in his tier 10 tank. That's tricky to do in any tier 10 vehicle. Enmai, thank you so much for uploading this replay, and you gave me some absolute chills in remembering what this tank used to be like in patch 7.5. And fair enough, it's not quite there again, but it's close enough to be a competitive vehicle and to not have that constant niggle in your head of thinking, oh, if I was in a different medium tank, I'd probably be doing better in this situation, that I've always had in this tank for the last 3 years. And so hopefully you guys enjoyed this video as well. If you did, please consider giving it a like down below. It really helps the channel out. And if you want to see another killer round in a tier 10 American medium tank, then simply click through up here. It's the M60 played by Captain Ninja Cat. That's a tier 10 Clan Wars reward vehicle, or use the more info icon in the top right hand corner of your screen. And let me know in the comments down below what you think about the M48A1 in patch 9.13. Have you played this tank since the buffs? Or maybe you're an old school player who, like me, played this tank a lot in patch 7.5. And also tonight I'm going to return to live streaming as I took a little break over the Christmas period. So hopefully I see all of you there. I promise I'll play some M48A1 for at least a round or two. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.